Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Kim and today we're going to do my August wrap up. So how did I do in August? Well, I did pretty well. Thanks to the magical readathon, once again I read quite a few books. Did I complete Bookopoli? No, I didn't. I missed by one book. Am I going to punish myself? No, I'm not, because I read a lot. Okay, I read a lot. It's one of my best reading months, so I'm not going to forfeit. What did I read? Well, in August, I read 20 books. Who am I? I read 20 books. I read a total of 6,274 pages. That averages to about 202 pages per day. 202 per day. How? The ratings that I gave out this month, I gave out 0 1 stars, I gave out 2 2 stars, 5 3 stars, 8 4 stars, and I gave out 5 5 stars, which averages out around about 3.8 stars per book per month. So, should we get into them? Because I think this is going to take a while. The first book that I read for this month was actually an ARC read. I got this before it was released. Thank you to the publisher and the author for sending it my way. It was Good Bad Girl by Alice Feeney, and I absolutely loved this one. I managed to get this onto the Magical Readathon for a bog cataloguer, and that was a prompt to read by water. Now, even though I do live on the south coast, I didn't manage to get anywhere near a body of water, so I read this in the bath. That counts. It's next to a body of water. But Alice Feeney is becoming very fast one of my favourite authors. So, are you surprised? It got 5 stars. Absolutely loved this. If you can pick this up, go and do it because it is great. The second book that I read this month was for an O in law, which is to read a bookseller's recommendation, and for that reason I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, and I loved it. I loved it. It was so cozy, and oh my god, Viv, I just love Viv. Again, it got 5 stars. The next one that I read was for D in Psionics and Divination. This was to have a lily on the cover. This was a hard book to find with a lily on a cover, but I did. It was The Lost Apothecary, and I loved this one. I loved that we had the 2 separate worlds, the future, the current and the past, and I kind of liked the current more than I did the past. It was good to see like the past. Definitely loved the future, the present more. And I loved this world, so for that reason it got 4 stars. The next book that I read was for O in Spells Incantations. That was to read a manga or graphic novel. It was also on my Bookopoli 3 sci-fi, and I managed to get on a final book support group as well for the most anticipated, and that was Saga Volume 5. And I loved being back in this world. This family is just so I can't get enough of them. I don't know why it took me so long to pick this up. Of course, it got 5 stars. So we're now in the final book support group part of the month, which meant that I kind of switched off a little bit from Magical Readathon and concentrated more on sequels. So the next book that I read was Halo the Flood, and this was to continue a series that I'm unsure about. I was a little bit unsure about this one, not gonna lie, and I don't know why I was unsure, because I loved, again, being back in this world. There was a lot of conflict in this one, and man, I don't know why I was unsure about it. It got 4 stars. The next one was on the final book support group to borrow a book. I borrowed from Scribd. It counts. I read Lumberjanes, A Terrible Plan. This one for me fell a little bit shorter than the first 2 that I read in this series, and whereas the first 2 sort of had like a moral to the story. This one fell a little bit flat for me, so for that reason I only got 3 stars. The next one was on Final Book Support Group to use a spinner wheel to pick my book. I used a spinner wheel to pick every book in the Final Book Support Group week, but we put this one in here for this one. It was also a magical readathon for O in Art of Illusion to read a book without touching the floor, which meant it had to be a shorty, and it was pretty short. It was only 229 pages long, and unfortunately it was not a good one. It is Live and Let Die by Ian Fleming, and you can tell this was written a long time ago. Some of the language used in here is very archaic, and it wasn't too good. So it did only get 2 stars. The next one was on Final Book Support Group to finish a series, finish a final book. That's the whole point of the readathon. So this one was also on Bookopoly for a pet pick. So little Laura helped me pick this one out. And it also got me part of my Dragon Rider's license for Magical Readathon. It was the Shadow Cabinet. And again, unfortunately, this one didn't live up to the first book. The first book for me was pretty good. Not as good as I remember, apparently. I thought I'd give it like 5 stars, but it turns out I only gave it like 4. So this not being as strong as the first book, I only rated this a 3. The next book, thankfully, was on Final Book Support Group for my longest series. I am very happy that this is the longest series that I'm reading and not Wheel of Time. It would have been hard to get that one on there this month. This was also Q for Art of Illusion, which was to listen to an audiobook. It was also on Bookopoly to read a thriller. And it was the Agatha Christie Poirot read-along for this month. It was Dead Man's Folly. And oh my god, Christie is back. I've slumped with Christie for a little while, but this one was really good. This one got 4 stars. The next one was on Final Book Support Group to read a veteran sequel, and kind of forgot about a little bit, was the Witcher series. So this one was The Witcher Sword of Destiny. Finally, I have read this book and I loved it. It got 5 stars. Cannot wait to pick up the next one. And that was the last book in the Final Book Support Group, so we are back to Magical Readathon. This was O for Alchemy. It was first in the series. It was also on Bookopoly to steal a book. And it was the A Court of Spicy Books book for this month. It was The Witch Collector. I liked parts of this. Some other parts fell quite flat for me. If it wasn't as spicy as I would have liked, it did only get 3 stars. The next book was Q in Psionics and Divination. This was to read a book set in the future, and this was one of, I think, my favourite books of the year. I know I'm saying that quite early, it's only August, but I absolutely loved it. I loved being in this world, I loved all the little techie parts, I loved it. It was Ready Player One and it got 5 stars. The next one was for O in Psionics and Divination. It was to use a random tarot card generator and match the image of what's on the tarot cards to cover of a book. For that reason, I chose Buffy Volume 4, and this fell a little flat as well. It didn't really seem to go anywhere. Nothing really seemed to happen. So for that reason, it only got 3. The next one was on Bookopoly to read an author that I'd already read from before. I'd used a random number generator to pick the author, and this was also on Magical Readathon to get a Sandship Engineer license, which was to read a book with a desert setting, and for that reason I chose A Torch Against the Night, and I didn't enjoy this one. I really didn't. I don't know why. I just didn't connect with any of the characters. It just didn't, it just didn't hit for me. So for that, it only got 2 stars. The next one was for my Dragon Rider's license. For that, I just needed a dragon in it. I didn't know whether it had a dragon or not, and it had a dragon on the cover, so I just assumed that there would be. So for that reason, I read The Girl Who Drank the Moon. And this read a lot younger than I thought it would. So it only got 3 stars. I'm sorry, don't come for me. The next one was a little side quest that was created while we did the all-nighter, and that was to Feed the Cats. Yes, please. This was to read a book with a P and an S in the title, so I switched things up a little bit on my TBR to get this into this prompt. It was also the Rory Gilmore Book Club book for this month, which was to read a children's book, and for that reason I read Mary Poppins, and I loved it. Not so much as the film. I really love the film. You know, it's just a Christmas classic for me to watch Mary Poppins with my family. So it was really good, but it didn't hit quite as well, so it did only get 4 stars. That's pretty high. The next book was on Magical Readathon for an apothecary keeper, which was to read a book with plants on the cover. It was also the buzzword book for this month, which was to read a book with body parts in the title. So for that reason I read The Lovely Bones, and I really enjoyed this. It didn't go in the direction that I had in my brain, but I actually really enjoyed this. It was dark in places. A lot darker than I thought it would be. For that reason, it got 4 stars. The next book that I read this month was just because I wanted to read it. It's not for any prompts, it was not to fill anything, it was there, I picked it up. So I read Dark Rooms, and I absolutely loved this book. I can definitely tell that I'm kind of edging into my mystery thriller era. I really enjoyed this one. It got 4 stars. The next book was the second book for Apothecary Keeper, which was to read a book with plants on the cover, and for that reason I read Mothers and Daughters. And I enjoyed this one as well. I only picked it up because it had pictures of plants on the cover and it was available at the library at the time, and I was completely shocked. I really enjoyed this. It got 4 stars. And the final book that I read this month was the second book to read for Sandship Engineer, which was to read a book with a desert setting. So for this, I literally just went onto Scribd, typed in the word desert, couldn't find one, typed in the word sand, and Rebel of the Sands came up. And I remember seeing this somewhere. I can't remember where. But I'm glad I picked this one up because I really enjoyed it. It got 4 stars. So there you go. That's everything that I read in August. 20 books in August. Why do I feel a burnout coming? Wish me luck for next month. Anywho, as always, down in my description box you can find a link to all of my socials. Come give me a follow on Goodreads, on Instagram and on Twitter. You can like this video, you can comment, and you can subscribe if you really want to. Want to let me know you're here without actually talking to me? Let's leave Magical Readathon. Is there like a top hat with a bunny popping out? Or a wand? Something magical. Leave it for me below, and I will see you next time. Toodles.